from left to right, for those of you who don't know, although I'm sure many of you know, every single lady up here, I have the Honorable Lisa Marie Nero. Dr. Jennifer Lewis. And Dr. Kim McNair. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Not today. She's a lady in many hats. So I will let the ladies give you a brief introduction about themselves, and then we'll move forward.
Good morning. My name is Nero. I am proud to be on this panel. I was asked by Madam Chair a couple of years ago to start talking about my dissertation that I am doing for my doctorate in education. And when she first asked me, it was, okay, Lisa, we need to present reparations to Westchester. Go. So my first introduction, before even trying to defend the dissertation, was presenting reparations to Westchester County. And we just give Tasha a round of applause because she credit is due. But the important part of bringing it to Westchester is, of course, unfortunately, the rich history that we do have, and to just bring awareness, because a lot of people are not aware of reparations. They're not aware of what it is. They are not aware of just how critical it is to, for lack of a better word, the Black community, and especially Black women and how we are affected. So I just wanted a couple of minutes just to discuss the work that I have done and how I have had this platform to thank. So let's give it up for Westchester work. Proud team member, yes ma'am. And but again, we just know the seriousness of this. And but again, we just want to have a conversation, start the discussion, and move ahead because legislation is stalled. So that's where I stand. Thank you. I just talk loud.
YWCA. But in addition to being the director of the Racial Equity Center, beyond my job title and my job description, I am a Black woman who is really shaped by generations of strength, struggle, and resilience through my ancestors. And I come to you as someone who has a strong vision and passions for the work that I do, to build space where people can have a voice, where we can shape our own futures, and we can create a world and a society where equality and justice can be realized. So I am honored to be here with you today, and I am doing this because of my ancestors and me honoring them, and for my young nieces that are 7 and 9 years old that are wearing jobs, and I know that they are going to have struggles in the future. So thank you for having me as part of your family.
Good morning. I am Kim, daughter of Teresa, who was the daughter of Mattie B., who was the daughter of Hester Martin. The blood that runs in my veins connects me to Dillon County, South Carolina, Kansas City, Missouri, and Jamaica. I'm a community organizer, I'm an educator, I'm a TT to Lydia and Olivia, I'm a friend and a sister. I believe that my goal, my mission in life is to answer the call to uphold a faith-filled legacy of service to humanity, and I do that through my organizing. I'm a third-generation Westchester resident, third-generation Town of Bedford resident. I am also Black with a capital B. Capitalize that B when you're talking about the people. I garden, I love Afrofuturistic fiction, and when I'm gardening, I am dreaming about a world where Black women's voices are heard, their leadership is followed, and their bodies are protected.
Thank you, ladies. So I really want to dive into this topic here that my mom mentioned earlier, slavery by another name, and why it is so urgent that we learn this history. And I'd like to share with you all that when I woke up this morning, I'm sorry, but I do go on social media, it's one of the first things I do. And I was scrolling and I saw a Malcolm X quote, and it said, "We are not outnumbered, we are out-organized." And yeah, you know, I mean, some will say that it still applies today. Kim, you mentioned the word organized a few times in your intro, and I wanted to ask you if you could speak about using history as an organizing principle. How has this shown up in your work?
So first I want to just level set a little bit about that word organize, because I remember when Barack was running for president, he said, "I'm a community organizer," and that kind of mystified, it set organizing on this level that seemed unattainable for everyone else to reach because he was Barack. Raise your hand if you've ever organized or called people in on a group chat. Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever invited people to a party, invited people out to walk, invited people over to your home, got your girls together to go out, and I know there's some fellas in the room too, so I'm not ignoring you, but said, you know what, let's go out let's go to Lily's on Friday, or La Cantina, or wherever you go on Friday. How many of you have done that? Okay, then I want to tell you something, you're an organizer. At the base level, that's organizing. I want to give you some principles of organizing and then get into history as an organizing principle. Basic principles of organizing. An organizer brings people together for a common goal. It's that simple. An organizer educates, motivates. An organizer strategically agitates. Keyword, strategically. It's easy to agitate. And some of us, just walking in a room, people get agitated. But we have to strategically agitate. An organizer provides technical support. So when you organize a gathering, who's watching the kids? Providing childcare, right? When you're gathering, whose Wi-Fi, whose hotspot are you using? That there's all kinds of technical support. So I want to just demystify what organizing is, because every single one of us in this room is an organizer. Let's go there. Now, history, I stand 10 toes down on a 10-point principles of organizing. I'm not going to go through all of them, but one of them is learning from history. So I want to give you 2 dates really quickly. Take out your pens. Educator always gives homework, so I'm giving you homework today because I'm only going to do top line here. 1640, the John Punch affair. John Punch runs away with Victor and, I lost his name, a Scotsman and a Dutchman. Pay attention to the language here because they weren't white. They weren't white yet. They were a Scotsman and a Dutchman. They run away with John Punch, who is an African. Again, pay attention to the language. They're all indentured servants. They're all indentured servants. They are all indentured servants. Don't Google it, just write it down, because I see you on your phones already. So they run away together and they get captured. They're brought back. The Dutchman and the Scotsman get additional years added to their indentured servitude. What do you think John Punch got? Life. I want you to think about, so what does 1640 matter for today? What does someone get sentenced for crack versus a sentence for cocaine? The disparate sentencing did not begin with Rockefeller. 1640. Another date I want to give you, 1662. It's the Elizabeth Key case. I know I got time, I'm going to wrap this up. Elizabeth Key was an enslaved woman. Her father was white. He manumitted her in his will. I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version. Anyone remember Reader's Digest?
Yes.
I said Reader's Digest version in a training once, and people looked at me like I had 3 heads because they don't know. So I'm giving you the TLDR, the too long didn't read version. Elizabeth Key sued for her freedom because after her enslaver, and let's just be clear here, they were enslavers, not slaveholders, they were enslavers. Let's put some language on their name to indicate what they did to people. Her original enslaver said, when I die, you'll be free. When she died, his children sold her. The next enslaver said, no, you're not free. But Elizabeth Key and her partner knew the law. She sued for her freedom and won. And she said, I'm suing because my father was a free man and the law states that the status of the child follows the status of the father. That's English law. And also, I was baptized. So she was using Christianity and the law. She gained her freedom. Other enslaved people gained their freedom as well. And then the House of Burgess in Virginia said, we have to put a stop to this. And so they changed the status of the child following the father to the status of the child following the mother. But you get it. Which means that this legalized sexual assault against black women for the sake of producing a labor force that created the wealth of this country. So what does that matter? What's happening to black women's bodies today? And why do we talk about black women who are single as having too many baby daddies? Where does that come from? Where do we get this idea that black women are loose, they're Jezebels? Where does that come from? So when you know your history, you're able to take what you know in history and then use that to educate and motivate people to think differently. And when you know better, you what? Do better. That's right. Not only do you do better, you organize better. You educate other people better. You live differently. You move differently. That's why history is important as an organizing tool.
Thank you for those deep examples. When we think about why it's so urgent to learn from this history, Jennifer, do you have any thoughts on what that means to you in the work that you do?
I'm not as loud as them, so I do need the microphone.
No shade.
No shade. I don't really have much more to add to that amazing history lesson that Reverend Kim gave us. But I do think it really is important that we understand our history, because oftentimes when people think about history, they think about the past, right? Something that was behind us. But that history, as we think about what our ancestors went through with slavery, is still with us. When we think about the systemic racism that we have to deal with, those are all based on things that have happened in our past that are still current. And it impacts who's heard, who's seen, who has opportunities. And if we don't understand that history and how it is impacting us today, it really will prevent us from really being having the ability to make a change, right? It gives us clarity and it gives us the language that we need to use as we move forward in this movement.
Thank you. How about from you, Lisa? Any thoughts there?
When I was doing my work, my study had came from the reparations resolution from the NAACP. We were in, I was about to say Las Vegas, but Jersey, Atlantic City. And when Vice President Kamala Harris came and spoke, and we were going over the resolutions and we were voting, and the resolution for reparations came up, and what happened was the results were 73% were for reparations. 73% were for reparations, 2% abstained, and 25% said no. And at the NAACP meeting. So that got me to thinking, whatever we're doing to try to press reparations, and I'm going to tie it in to when you said that we're not outnumbered, we're not organized. Out-organized. The reason, and again, just pulling it all together, is that when I came to try to figure out, I'm not going to try to figure out or help the 73%. We're good. It's the 25% we got to figure out. So the reasons behind lack of organization, or as we say, the reason why they don't want reparations is because, one, it's the lack of trust in government. Second, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, your own bootstraps. You don't need the government. Do it yourself. So when you're talking about what Kim was talking about, you have to really look at it from that term. But the most important thing is that they felt that they did not deserve reparations. How do you not deserve reparations? And I know I only have 1 minute left, so to those who did not think that they deserve reparations, they made the comparison, and it's this list of why we do deserve reparations. When you say slavery by another name, chattel slavery, Jim Crow, black codes, white domestic terrorism, racial massacres, racial property seizures, medical experimentations, sharecropping, convict leasing, Homestead Act exclusions, GI Bill exclusions, HFA mortgage exclusions, contract buying, redlining, urban renewal, racial covenants, war on drugs, mass incarceration, and ongoing police terrorism. And you're going to say we don't deserve reparations? I don't think so.
Thank you for sharing that list, Lisa. When we talk about emancipation and reparations, we often forget to ask, what did freedom look like for Black women? What were the limitations and what were the forms of resistance? And this question is for you, Jennifer. How does the Westchester Center for Racial Equity approach this question in the work that you're currently doing?
So in the work that I am doing, I actually made a whole list, but you guys will kill me if I sit here and go through our whole list of things that we're doing at the YWCA. Well, when I think about Black women and what they've had to go through in terms of freedom, they were really never free, right? So they were no longer property, but they still had shackles from the standpoint of not having the way in which their bodies were treated, not having access to opportunity. and having to deal with sexism and racism in silence. You still can't hear me, okay? And having to deal with sexism and racism in silence. And so when I think about the work that we are doing at the YWCA, particularly through my area, the Center for Racial Equity, we don't hide from that history. What we do is we use that history and we challenge the status quo. So this year, for 2025, I am actually looking at programs where I am trying to touch a multi-generational. So we're doing things like the Freedom School, which is amazing. I'm doing a little commercial here. The Freedom School was a grassroots effort that we actually brought to White Plains last year. And we're introducing 2 of them this year, one in White Plains, one in Peekskills. And the Freedom School was really started on the Civil Rights Movement as a way to give history to Black children and talk about civic engagement and talk about critical thinking, things that they were not exposed to in schools. The other thing that we are doing with the Racial Equity Center is menstrual equity. So I am partnering with organizations here in Westchester County, commercial. Next week with the WWA, we are having a program next Wednesday evening. Hopefully you can all join us. And we are screening a film called Me Period, in which we are talking about menstrual equity and trying to normalize those conversations about women in their menstrual cycle. The other thing that I am working, or a company that I'm working with, is the Alzheimer's Association. And with the Alzheimer's Association, we're really trying to get the word out and educate people not only about Alzheimer's and all different forms of dementia, but what people don't understand or realize is that the community that is most affected by Alzheimer's is the African American community. So we are trying to educate people. I just put up a sign, I need to wrap up. But we are trying to educate people about why that is and what you need to do to help prepare yourself, because many of us will be impacted by it.
And Jennifer, what do you see in the young people today as they learn about Juneteenth and structural racism?
Okay. I love young people today. I love them because I think they have clarity. I think they have organized anger. And I think they are willing to call out injustices. They're willing to go out and they're willing to march. But I'm also concerned. I'm concerned about young people because, no shade, they get a lot of their news from the internet and social media, which is misinformation many times. Also, we know that the school systems are distorting the truth, and in many cases, not providing what has really happened in our past. And so I'm concerned that if this is where they're getting their news, that they are not being told the truth. And when I think about young people, I say they're not our future, they're our current, because you have so many of them out here on the front lines. And so we need to ensure that they are fighting for the right things, that they understand our past. Because from that wonderful history that we were just given by Reverend Kim, we know that our past is our future and we need to understand that.
And then jumping back over to you, Kim, before we get into the personal side of lineage, I realized I forgot a question that I know is important for you to answer. You've also worked with words and timelines, and can you explain to us how those tools help people reckon what they've taught and what they haven't been taught?
So the timeline, just a little peek behind the curtain. In my organizing and using history as an organizing tool, you have to know history. And if I were to ask you right now, name some of the dates that you remember from high school, I'm sure everyone in the room would say 1776, right? And that, knowing that though, has created a narrative of the way you understand this country. We were free from tyranny in 1776. There's even a movie and a play and all those things. The timeline though, those two dates I mentioned earlier, again, ground you in understanding the truth. And there's a reason why some of those dates may be new to you. They were new to me once also. The question that you asked just a couple minutes ago about resistance that's part of it. In that timeline is also, there are stories of resistance. All right, take out your pens again. Go look up Bacon's Rebellion. That's a story about organized resistance between indigenous and Africans on behalf of a white guy who was angry at other white guys. So there's that piece, so it's complicated. But look up Bacon's Rebellion. If we want to talk and look at history for examples of resistance, and very clever, this is the agitating strategically. Look up the story of Georgia Gilmore. Georgia Gilmore created this organization called the Club to Nowhere. It was during the Montgomery bus boycott. So people are boycotting. So if they're not taking the bus, they're finding other means of transportation, which means they need someone to fix their car. They need someone to fix their wagon. They got to put gas in the car. Georgia Gilmore was someone she was an amazing cook. In fact, Martin Luther King ate some of her food. He brought John F. Kennedy down to eat some of her food. So she fed highly regarded people, but she also organized the women in her community to sell food, to fund the bus boycott, to make sure people had gas in their car. She got fired from her job, and they named it the Club to Nowhere because if anyone asked her, what's this money for? Oh, it's just for nowhere. That's resistance. Right in the face of people who are oppressing. That's what resistance looked like. But again, if you don't know the history of someone like Georgia Gilmore, and I get goosebumps every time I talk about her because she was fierce, ornery. She had a reputation for being ornery, but that's okay because she was organizing and in the spirit of resistance. So that history piece, bringing that together, history is not just a subject that you take a class in high school. It is living. So yeah.
And as someone whose family has lived through Jim Crow, what does emancipation mean generationally for you?
So the Emancipation Proclamation is a document. I know so I work at my sister's place. I know we say in the movement, an order of protection isn't going to stop a bullet, right? So it's a document that I don't even know that Lincoln really believed in anyway. I think he just put it out there so the country wouldn't be torn apart. So there's that. And that's in the history book. My mother, so I know some people in this room know my mother, so you can go back and tell her what I said or not. I don't care, because, you know. My mother was born in 1943 in Mississippi, Goddamn. And if you don't know the song, write it down and look it up and look at the words that Nina Simone sang about Mississippi. That's the Mississippi my mother grew up in. And she safety planned, and I'm very clear, she safety planned her way out of Mississippi because she was seeking and claiming her emancipation. She lied to her mother and said, I'm going to St. Louis, where all of our other family went on the Great Migration, and she came to New York. Because she knew if she stayed in Mississippi, she was going to die. I don't come from a family of women who are weak-minded, or who panic. She planned her way out. That's what emancipation looks like. It looks like telling people, you're not going to kill me, I'm going to leave. And that's why when I introduce myself, I say I'm the daughter of Terry McNair, asterisk, a woman who got out of Mississippi, goddamn, for the sake of her life. That's what emancipation looks like. Emancipation looks like Ida B. Wells marching in a march that the suffragists organized and told her she couldn't march in, and at the risk of her life, she marched in that march. That's what emancipation looks like. Emancipation looks like every single day, and repeating the words of Lucille Clifton, every day something is tried to kill me and failed. That's what emancipation looks like. Coming here today, this is what emancipation looks like. And we stand on the shoulders of women who did it at greater risks than we are facing today. What danger am I facing compared to the dangers that our ancestors faced? That's emancipation, but I get all of that from knowing what my mother escaped. And the last thing I'll say, I got 30 seconds, is I learned that my mother came to New York as part of the Great Migration because I read Isabel Wilkerson's book, Warmth of Other Suns. And in that book, she gives us the timeline for the Great Migration. And I read that and I thought, oh snap, my mother was on the, she escaped the South like millions of other black people. But she didn't tell me she came on the Great Migration. She told me stories about her life and I listened. And then I read, and then I connected the dots. So I could also experience emancipation. Because I'm free. I'll say this, I know I'm like 10 seconds over. I'm also 57 years old, right? And I know I'm young in this room, but I'm 57. I am waiting for the day where I can be so free that people will hear me say things and they'll say, oh, she's just old. So I'm getting there. I'm working my way to another level of emancipation.
Thank you, Kim. Ladies, believe it or not, we have only like 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. So I just have one more question for Lisa, and then one question for everyone, and then we'll give everyone their time back. Actually, we'll open it up if anyone has any questions for the panelists. So, you know, Lisa, you run for office, led labor, and writing about reparations. What does resistance and accountability look like right now?
Okay, resistance and accountability. I appreciate that New York State has tried to take accountability to even address it. Again, be installed in the federal government. It's very disappointing. So I applaud New York State, and I applaud the majority leader. I applaud the assembly leader, and I applaud Governor Hochul for creating a commission for the state to move forward with legislation. And the only thing is, I only see it. It's a study. That's all. $12 million federally for a study. We have to move forward with the legislation. And the main problem is that everybody is under the impression you cannot, it's impossible to place a monetary value on slavery. They're too concerned with bankrupting the country. How many millions do you give for the Justice Department and the military? And how about those families coming here from other countries? I'm not going to point anybody out. But the thousands of dollars that they give them, it's just very disappointing. So when you look at the resistance is the legislation. When you look at people trying to move forward and organize, you can look at the state and applaud them for their efforts. The commission, everyone on that commission, and everyone that basically has this as a time is now, not 37 years ago. Thank you.
And final question. You know, how do we make sure Juneteenth doesn't just become symbolic, especially when Black policy progress is being rolled back as we speak?
When you leave today, it's the beginning. I gave you homework. Do your homework. And if you're an adult who's in relationship with children, talk to your kids. And if you're an adult who's in relationship with your elders, ask them questions and record those stories and then share them with your kids. Keep talking. You don't have to be on a panel, you don't have to organize a freedom school, but if you're in think about the relationships that you're in already. Start there. And we know some of the hardest places to organize are right under our own roofs, but start there. Start talking to each other. Did you know? And by the way, I hear you on the media and the news, so I don't watch any mainstream media. I check out ProPublica. There are plenty of respectable and honorable and truth-telling news sources on social media. I'm on Blue Sky. You can reach me. I'm Reverend T.T. Kim on Blue Sky. You can follow me there. I think that's the best place. And I share, and on Substack also, and I know Substack is a little problematic, but follow Black women on Substack and you will get some incredible information. But again, it's about relationships. We have to be in relationship, not transactional, but really transformative relationships where I can look Katie in the eye and say, read this and let's talk about it. That's what we do.
Thank you. Thank you to our lovely panelists today. I'm not sure how you want to, should I just open up for questions? Okay.
So, for years we've been interactive, and I just want to give the panel another round of applause. Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you, learning with you. One of the things that I didn't mention is we are looking to archive the research that we've discovered into the Westchester County Archives. We have no idea how to do that, but that is something that we're looking to do, and we have Greenburgh's town clerk here to guide us in that endeavor. So when Kim does the research on John Punch and Elizabeth Key, we're going to present that to you in a digital product. We're not sure what that looks like yet, but it's very important that once we discover this, that we are archival and intentional in telling this history, especially in the face of banning books and the no-no words. There's hundreds of no-no words that can prevent you from being funded and things like that. So thank you to the panel. This iteration of interactive activity has to do with all of you. So at your seat, in your program, there is a page with some reflective questions. And I'm just gonna ask Leslie Mazzata to come up. Leslie and Cindy have worked on the interactive components of this event since its inception, and I just want to thank her and recognize her for that work.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Leslie Mazzata. I am actually one of Dr. Lewis's colleagues at the YWCA of White Plains. And I'm also honored to be here as a member of WWA and also got to work with Tasha on this event. And as Tasha said, we have tried to be interactive since the first year we started these Juneteenth celebrations. And that's why we've every year had these 4 questions, and they're in the back room if you haven't seen them yet. They are, what does Juneteenth mean to me? From last year to this year, what challenges still exist in my community? What successes still exist in my community? And how do I feel called to action and help? And we ask these questions because we want to hear from you every year. We want to hear your voice, your experience, your needs, and your hopes. And so if you haven't answered those questions, please do, because we love to see how the questions have changed. Like, we want to celebrate some of the successes in the back. Several people talked about how one of the successes is that some of the streets in their towns have been named after historic Black people. 2 different people mentioned that, and that's different from our answers last year or in 2023. So we want to continue to use this to archive it, to understand as a collective what, as I said, our experiences and our needs and our hopes and our desires are. So please do that, and then do you want to talk about these questions?
I do want to talk about it, but I think I need to switch gears a little bit because we are running late. We do want to dismiss on time, and I do want to give the panelists time to answer any questions that you might have, and then we'll get back to your reflection time. Does anyone have any questions for the panelists? Okay, and I also have a